I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending April the 5th, brought to you by Cargill Fescue EMT. Tall fescue, a dream to grow, but for cattle, it can be a nightmare. Fescue EMT is a new mineral defense with end-of-fight management technology. Research proven and backed by the expertise of Cargill Animal Nutrition. It's uniquely designed to help defend cattle against the challenges of grazing end-of-fight infected fescue while improving growth and overall performance. Make sure your cattle are prepared for the threat. Learn more at fescueemt.com. Going to get a little bit personal with you like I do sometimes on these visits, but on the weekly summary it's a good time to do that. But a lot of us have heroes along the lines, maybe back in our ancestral history, and I have one too. It was my great granddad. Name was Willard Wall. He was a old-time rough cattle buyer, rancher, market owner. Did it all. Started out in Missouri. It's funny because I spent a lot of my life in Missouri, but he started out in Missouri. Working on a farm that he grew up on and plowing with horses and mules, and he hated farming. He eventually started buying local livestock and taking them to the East St. Louis, the stockyards. He wanted to go out west to bigger ranches and buy cattle out there. He ended up in Binkelman, Nebraska. He loved Binkelman, Nebraska, but he began finding his best source of trade running up and down the east side of Colorado, and kind of formed a niche there, buying a lot of cattle off ranches all up and down that east side of Colorado and running gravel roads there all times of the year in his old Chrysler New Yorker. But he was a tough one. He was like a lot of cattle guys. He was rich and poor several times during his life. He lived a full life. He didn't make it to 100 years old, but just about as good. His 100th birthday was the same day as his funeral. And that's no kidding, I'll promise you that. But anyway, he told me some things late in his life, not long before he died. He told me that, he said just about every day of his life, from the time he was a young man or just a big kid, he said, I smoked a can of Prince Albert, I chewed a plug of tobacco, and I drank at least a pint of whiskey every day. He said it never bothered me too much, but he didn't think a guy ought to get hooked on it. But I tell you what, the things that he ate to live that long, and he stayed slim his whole life. He ate crisp bacon, over easy eggs, and he ate steak. He smoked and chewed real tobacco. He drank water plain, drank a lot of coffee, and drank whiskey straight, and managed to live to be as old as anybody could ever hope to live. The thing that I'm trying to hit on, other than just brag about my great granddad, is that he wasn't puffing on some kind of a metal tube with all kinds of chemicals in it, with a vapor that looks like smoke. Everybody knows that tobacco is bad for you. Yeah, some people choose to chew it, some people choose to smoke it. They've been doing it for hundreds of years, and we kind of know what the results are if you do too much of it. And the same with drinking. But with food, he ate those real things, ate a lot of meat and eggs and potatoes and things like that. The thing that he didn't eat much of, or any of, was snacks loaded with preservatives. And I just think that that's kind of a thing that we ought to maybe look back on. But here's what I'm getting at. We've got some problems here with people exploiting the hamburger world. We've got a hamburger franchise that has basically been very successful over a long period of time, exploiting the people's love for all beef hamburgers, actually flame broiled hamburgers that everybody really has loved, and they've made a career out of that. But suddenly they've decided to turn their backs on the beef producers that have made them rich and caused them to grow so much over the years. But I don't know about the rest of you guys, but it seems like a double crossing to me. And I'm gonna probably decide, or absolutely decide, to never darken the doorstep again. You know, I'm not very powerful. Not very many people watch this video. Once in a while, get several thousand a day, I might. But I tell you what, the cattle people, if you talk about agriculture, people associated with production agriculture directly make up less than 2% of the population in the United States. So cattle production would sure be half of that. So it'd be less than 1% of the people that it might bother that we've got fake meat going into one of the most successful hamburger franchises in history. And now they've decided to turn their backs on the meat producers that's made them all that money, and make something. And I don't care whether it's one that's made out of a meat germ or one that's plant-based. I do think this one's plant-based, but if you're going to grow some kind of a soybean hash and mix it up and then just pour fake artificial flavoring in it and coloring in it, trying to come up with something that imitates meat or beef, you know, that's a dirty, underhanded trick. And then to put the name of one of your most famous regular hamburgers on it like that, you know, I hope the cattle producers remember that whenever they're selecting a fast food joint. But just the cattle producers are not going to do it. I hope everybody that's ever liked John Wayne, anybody that's ever enjoyed going and visiting on their grandpa's farm or their uncle's farm, anybody that's ever liked watching Lonesome Dove, anybody that's a cowboy fan, maybe an ag teacher with a busload of FFA kids, any of that kind of stuff. You just got to remember, this deal is serious, people. And I don't know where our fighters for the cattle industry are at. Seemed like this deal just kind of slipped in, maybe some local blowback a little bit, and this actually started in the Burger Kings in St. Louis and is starting to spread out from there. But I don't know why we don't have some of our beef associations in there with guns ablazing and just trying to teach the consumers about what's actually going on here. I'd be afraid to eat there because I might get, they might get my food mixed up with some of that, and I might get a bite of it. I'll never know what it tastes like, ever. And I hope the rest of you don't either that are watching this. But I just think we really need to get on the offense on this and start pushing back, because it's as serious a deal as there ever was. Yeah, talk to your milk producer friends out there. They might not have thought too much about this fake milk that's out there, but I tell you what, it's getting a pretty large percentage of the volume of sales there. And I don't know how you milk an almond, but there's people out there that think it's just milk, just like your other milk is, just like the milk we've been drinking ever since we were little bitty kids. But I tell you what, I bet if you asked the milk producers, they wished that they'd have got out in front of this deal a little bit quicker. And I don't know how far it's going to go before we start seeing some considerable pushback on this. You guys, just like me, you know, whenever you sell cattle and you're short a little bit on there and you don't always make money, but there's somebody that always makes a buck every time you sell one. Those bucks add up. They should be pretty tall, considerable, and there should be money to get out there and push back on this thing. But I'm going to get off of that a little bit, but I tell you what, it's hard to believe. But this week around, I tell you what, the markets were very volatile on your futures market. Your African swine flu rumors were swirling around. Maybe at the start of the week, we kind of backed off a little bit, thinking, well, that China deal is not really going to develop. Then by the middle of the week, we had heard that maybe they had lost twice as much of their herd as what we had thought. Of course, the fake news coming out of China is maybe worse than what we get here in the United States, but it's all state sponsored and you can't really find out what's going on over there. But they're definitely struggling with their hog herd there, and they're going to be short of protein. And the reality has not really hit home yet, but we're thinking that there's going to be a considerable need for protein. And there's so many people over there. As big as our population is, doesn't even make up a quarter of theirs. And they've got a lot of people that need to be fed. They're not worried. They're not so ritzy and fluent that they're looking at maybe getting some kind of a fake meat. No, they want real protein over there to feed those people. They're used to eating mostly their own pork, but they're having such a trouble with the outbreak of this African swine flu, they're going to need some more protein. Yes, they might go to some other countries before they come to us because they're used to trading with them earlier. But I guarantee you it's a topic that's in Trump's relations with them on trade with China and getting things going. But if we could start just moving some pork to them, and then if that goes pretty smoothly, then maybe we can switch over and offer them some beef, and then maybe they'll start taking some considerable loads of that. But it's a big deal. If they've lost maybe 30% of their hog herd right now, they're scrambling quite a bit. If it gets much worse than that, we don't even have enough to help them. I tell you what, the populations are so big over there, the demand is so big that it's something to definitely watch. It's helping our futures market kind of out front because people think it's going to be a little while before it makes an impact, but it's quite a deal. If you look out front there on your April live cattle futures, for the week we had Monday up 47 cents, Tuesday up a dime, Wednesday down 50 cents. Thursdays, when some of those more rumors come in, up 177, and Friday down $1.50, 126.05. That was up 35 cents for the week. Your out fronts gained quite a bit of ground. Some of your far out fronts towards the end of the year and the beginning of next year, and most all of that was on rumors from the hope of China trade of protein. But you look at June, live cattle futures ended the week at 119.47. That was up 47 cents for the week. April feeder cattle, Monday was up 20, Tuesday down 60, Wednesday down 10 cents, Thursday up $1.57, and Friday down 17 cents at 146.15, up 90 cents for the week. May was at 150.22 at the end of the week, up $1.45. Your fat cattle trade, it kind of happened all through the week, but once again, for the second week in a row, your Southern Plains gave way early in the week at lower prices. Very defeating. But Kansas and Texas and the Southern Plains started trading Tuesday morning, even late morning there. And they did some more on Wednesday, but 124 was the number. That's $2 lower. We didn't see much trade at all in the Northern Plains until a little bit later in the week, and especially in out west, the northwest part of our 5-area feeding region, Colorado, Wyoming, western Nebraska. They didn't trade till later in the week, but most of that trade was from 126 to 128. And that's kind of unevenly steady. We know that the Northern Plains is kind of keeping a premium because of all the floods and the disaster that they had up there. They're shorter numbers, they're lighter of weight, and that is starting to show. So I would say mostly 126, but there was some 128 up there, and there's going to be kind of a spread there, and they were still doing that on Friday. So even though right now through Thursday at 37,000 head, we've got a weighted average of live steers in the 5 area at 124.5, just a little bit more. We were going to creep a little bit higher than that once we get some more Friday sales in. Your dress trade was mostly at 204. We might have had a little bit of 205, 206 on Friday, so that could creep up a little bit too. But your dress trade in the Northern Plains $1 to $2 lower. But I tell you what, if things keep swirling around here and we get some out front support due to this China deal, we might could see another bounce and maybe get back up and push a new high for the spring here, but remains to be seen. Box beef cutout values were a pinch lower for the week. Your average trade for the week last week on choice $226.48, down $1.72. Selects $219.09, down 24 compared to the average of the previous week. That's a choice select spread of $7.39. 604 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Slaughter was pretty decent, 621,000. That's 7,000 more than the previous week and 6,000 more than the same week a year ago. Traveling around this week, I'm back in the friendly confines right now, but glad to be back. But I had a really good trip. Got to see a lot of country up through Nebraska and a lot of the destruction, the mess. A lot of these fields, it's just going to take a lot of labor to pick up logs and sticks and junk that come in on the ground with all the flood waters, you know, not to mention the people that were in the low spots that got completely washed out. But, you know, even up around the edges on the fringes is going to take a lot of work to clean that up. There's been a lot of donations of hay, building materials, things like that. Been a lot of people coming out to help. And I tell you what, if you don't like watching those videos, something wrong with you. But it's really a great deal. But I did talk to some locals up there in Nebraska, and they said something that's kind of troubling to me. They said some of the people that need it the worst are too proud to take it. It doesn't surprise me, but I wished it wasn't that way. But you know how people are, especially ag type people and farmers, and sometimes they don't want a handout, but you know, you just consider it as a hand up, you know, whenever you know, just pay it back forward. You know, maybe once you get recovered from this, and you guys will get recovered eventually, you can help somebody else out. But I mentioned there late in the week, probably the worst thing is for these counties, because they've lost multi-million-dollar bridges that people relied on to get around, and where they're going to come up with the money to replace that infrastructure, I have no idea. FEMA will help some, but it's not going to be enough. And I don't know the counties, you know, I don't know any county in rural the Midwest that's rich, that has money just to blow, because they've always got things they've got to do, improve roads and this and that, but it's going to be tough for them to recover from this. Look at your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central ended the week at 139.44, 22 cents higher than a week ago. We had some really high sales in there, but then we had some really uneven markets too. But in your cattle auctions for the week, your feeder cattle ended the week kind of unevenly steady to $2 higher. I know we've got a few in there we could call higher yet, but there was also some downtrends in there in a lot of places too. It was best on two-way cattle that could either go to feed or to grass. So with a stalker type condition and kind of a thin flesh, it was definitely best on those. Whenever you get guys bidding for a feed yard and guys bidding for grass on the same cattle, you know, naturally they're going to get higher, and that's where your best demand was on. And I really throw that more towards the stalkers than I do the feeder cattle. But it was also best on steers, and so you note that, because a lot of times those guys that really get aggressive for stalker cattle would rather have the steers, because if you're going to turn something out weighing, you know, upper sixes into the sevens pretty good, you want them to be a steer, so if they come off weighing 1,000 pounds, they won't be hard to sell. A giant heifer like that is kind of hard to sell. But many of the feeder heifers actually had a lower trend. Calves and stocker cattle, $3 to $5 higher for sure, and spots more. Look at a sale on Saturday there, probably the best Saturday sale in the southern part of the plains. Erickson, Nebraska would be the best one in the northern plains, but Fort Scott, Kansas, eastern Kansas there, had a good sale, around 2,500 head of feeder cattle. And if you look at this Cattle Market Central market report, you see that most all the trends in all those popular weight groups were higher, except for the 6 weights, and they were off just a pinch, but maybe not quite as many of those stocker type cattle weighing in the 6s as they had a week ago. And as we get closer and closer to turnout dates, maybe not quite as hot on them as they were. But look at this individual quote from Fort Scott: 60 head of 826-pound feeder steers bring $148.75 on Saturday, and that's pretty darn good. Bloomfield, Wisconsin, Bloomfield Livestock Exchange, and they had 59 head of 788-pound steers there on Friday, I believe, at $157.25. And another quote out of that country, Dunlap, Iowa, good sale there. The Shabans, 59 head of 888 big steers there, bring $143.50. That's a look at your markets from Home DV Auction Office here in Canyon, Texas. We'll talk to you next week.